Welcome to Public Speaking with Peter George. Do you want to be calm, confident, and credible every time you speak in public? Then stay tuned as Peter and his guests discuss public speaking tips, techniques, and tactics that help you increase your impact, influence, and income. Here's your host, Peter George.
The fear of public speaking is so pervasive that many, if not most, books on public speaking include a chapter on the subject. But Mike Acker's book, Speak with No Fear, is different. It focuses on the fear of public speaking and how to move beyond it so you can accomplish what you want in life, even if it's not standing in front of an audience. Listen in as Mike shares ideas and techniques that help you overcome the fear that's holding you back. Mike is an executive and communication coach, a keynote speaker, and the author of 4 books, including the best-selling Speak with No Fear, which has appeared on numerous book lists. In fact, it was designated as the #1 book on covering fear of public speaking on Forbes.com. Mike passionately coaches business professionals to lead and speak with confidence. In presentations, he entertains and inspires audiences using stories of growing up as the son to drug smugglers who turned missionaries. He retells and relates lessons learned on how to overcome insecurity and exclusion in a cross-cultural setting. And he unpacks the path from employee to manager to leader. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Peter. I'm looking forward to spending this time talking with you and to your audience.
Mike, what made you decide to write a book called Speak with No Fear?
Again and again, when I would meet with people and I work with corporate clients and personal clients, they would come up and just say, how do I get over my fear of speaking? I'm just so nervous all the time. I mean, extreme cases of people who are pretending Zoom crashes because they're that nervous. So it was the most repeated, often asked question again and again and again. At the time, I was actually full-time corporate America, Fortune 500, consultative sales. And part of writing the book was me escaping answering the same thing again and again and again. I was like, I'll write it in a book. I'll give it out to people. That will help. That backfired on me because the book went really, really viral and lots of people picked up. It's a top-rated book on that subject. And now more and more people are calling me about that topic. So it ended up being something that gave me more work instead of taking away. But I love it. And it was something that people asked again and again, and I had strategies for dealing with it. So I was able to put it down in a book.
In listening to your book, I hear you say, where you are is not where you stay. Why is this so important to you?
One of the huge reasons is that we have to have faith that we can improve. And a lot of people I meet with them, they say, I just always been this, I can't improve. I was talking with one CEO, and at first he hired me to begin working with him. And then shortly after, he's like, I just can't do it. And he didn't have that faith. And if you don't believe you can get good at something, you're not going to try. Why try soccer if you don't think you can do it? Why try anything if you don't think you're going to do it? And so again and again, all of improvement in really any area of life starts with faith that you can improve. So where you are, just because you're nervous or anxious or speech impediment, like I had, just because it's a second language, like I also experienced living in Mexico, just because whatever, you don't have to stay there. And this is a theme that runs throughout another book of mine as well. When I talk about lead with no fear, it's very much the same topic about overcoming your fear of speaking and not staying a victim in your leadership or in any other area.
Why do you think fear is so prevalent?
The fear is the reaction to the unknown or something that we think is going to go wrong. So if we're standing at the precipice of a cliff, we think that we could fall. So we have the fear of falling. If spiders, it's unknown, or we think that they could harm us. And so we have this fear. And so there's so many unknowns in speaking, and there's so many things that could go wrong in people's minds. I could fail. I could look like an idiot. I could be rejected. So it's this natural emotion to this unknown of what could go wrong. Well, in speaking, that's all over the place. If I am talking to a girl and I'm wanting to date and I want to reach out to her, well, I could get rejected. Well, that's a fear of speaking to a girl or to a guy. When I'm interviewing, I'm afraid to interview because what if they don't like me? And what if they don't take me? And so the unknown of what they're going to do. The update that you're going to give in a corporate meeting, I'm afraid because I don't know what is going to come out of it. And what's interesting is that most people are thinking about the negatives versus the positives. So in my book, I talk about imagine the worst and put down all the negatives that could possibly come out of this. You could look like an idiot. You could get rejected. People could laugh. Put them down in detail. And then I suggest also putting down in detail the pros. What could come out of this? What's very interesting is that the shelf life of the positives that come from speaking are far, far more lengthy than the ones that are on the con side. So for example, I might look like an idiot. How long is that going to stay with you? A week? I might get promoted. How long is that going to stay with you? The rest of your life? I mean, the advantages of that. And what people do is they're letting the negative, they're dwelling on the negative. So they're going down into this place of fear again and again and again, instead of dwelling on the positive. And so I recently just finished my workbook. It's coming out in a couple of weeks that goes along with it. And I actually have columns where people can put the positive and the negative. I'm looking forward for people to do that.
One of the 7 strategies you describe in the book is it's not about us. Can you explain what you mean by that? And is it important only in public speaking, or is it valuable in other areas of one's life?
Great question. It is valuable as well in other areas, but let's start with the public speaking. Do you remember when you were in middle school and when you would go to those dances in middle school? I don't know even if they do this anymore. There would be all the guys on one side and all the girls on the other, and they would not dance with each other. And I used to go to these dances, and I remember that everybody's so nervous to go talk to somebody and actually interact with each other. And the reason why is because in their mind, they're thinking, what are they going to think about me? What are they thinking about me? What are they going to think about me? What are they going to think about me? And that whole middle school dilemma of wondering what people are going to think about us then goes with us into our adult life. If I speak up, what are they going to think about me? What are they going to think about me? What are they going to think about me? But the reality is that no one's thinking about you. They're too busy thinking about themselves. And so you got a room full of people wondering what people are going to think about them. And yet everybody else doing the same thing. So at some point in time, my friend and I realized this, and we said, who cares? Let's just go out there. And we were like the 2 guys dancing with the girls in these middle school dances, because we got it, that it's not about us. It's about them. So we'd go out there and try to make the girls laugh and try to engage them. And it worked. We got out there. We actually got to talk to them. And I believe that the same thing is happening again and again in America and around the world, where people go in like, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? Do they like me? Do they think I match up? Do they think I'm a good CEO? Do they think I presented my closing arguments well? What do they think about me? Me. And when you do that, all you can see is all the flaws. But if you turn around and start thinking, this isn't about me. This is about my audience. In fact, right now, people are listening. While they are nice people, and I'm sure they want me to be a nice, happy life and all that, there's not saying, well, I hope Mike gets in a car crash. They're not thinking about that. But the reality is, as you're listening to this right now, you're thinking, I hope I learn something. I hope I learn something. I hope this is good for me. I hope this helps me pass the time. I hope I learn a new skill. I hope I get something out of this. So you're actually thinking about yourself. So I will be a better speaker if instead of thinking about what you're thinking about me, I can think about how I can serve you. How can I add value to Peter's audience? How can I give something that's going to help? And this will really help as a strategy. Get out of the focus on self and think through, how can I engage my audience? How can I give them the update that's going to be relevant to their life? How can I transfer the skill that they need? How can I teach them a new concept? How can I give them vision that's going to give them direction? But I, as a speaker, this is not about me being liked or anything. This is about me giving something to the audience.
And when we put the focus on ourselves, the I, me, that's an awful lot of weight for us to carry, which is a great segue to the point in your book where you talk about 2 weights and carrying those as a communicator. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so this is in the strategy of you be you. And I talk about when you're speaking, you're always carrying 2 weights. So if you think about going to the gym, if you grab a 10-pound barbell and you start pumping it with your bicep. Not that big because it's pretty close to you. Now, if you take that same 10-pound barbell that doesn't weigh much and is easy to pick up, and you push it away from you. So right now, even on the video here with Peter, I have my arm out towards him like I'm punching the camera. And if I carry that 10-pound out there as a front lateral raise, all of a sudden it gets very heavy. So the principle is the further away from your body, the further away from you, the weight is, the heavier it is. So far away from me, it starts shaking. Now I could take that same 10-pound weight, carry it close to the chest or right there in about my biceps, no problem at all. Well, when we're speaking, we have two different weights. We have the weight of content. The better I know something, the closer it is to the chest, the easier it's going to be to carry. So if I'm talking about nuclear fission, I'm going to start shaking right away. Put me in front of the audience to say, speak about this. I don't know. I mean, I have no authority or confidence in speaking. I'm going to be shaking all over the place. And so I don't know it. My weight is far from my body. But have me talk about what I'm talking about right now. I don't have a nervousness that's coming from this. I know this content well. I've talked about this many, many times. I wrote about it. I coach on this. So that content is close. The other one is your you-ness or your personhood. So you have the weight of content, but you also have the weight of personhood. Just like if I don't know the content, I'm going to shake. If I'm not being true to myself, I'm going to shake. So now I'm extending my left hand out in front of the camera. And if I am trying to be someone else, if I'm trying to act in a certain way, the further away from me I get, the more I'm going to shake. I can't keep that weight out there very long without causing me to really shake, just like many people shake with nervousness. But if I bring the personhood, the weight of personhood to the chest, I'm still being me, and there's still weight to it when I put it in front of others, but now it's completely manageable. I can carry that weight for a long, long, long time. What's happening is a lot of people especially in corporate America or in professional life in America and others, I have clients around the world, and in the military, is that there's a certain idea that we need to be this type of person. I was working with one major in the military, and she said, I just want to be a great speaker. And so without her knowing it, I set her up for failure by saying, so who do you want to be like? And it was kind of a trick. I was trapping her. And she starts detailing this guy that he would have been about 20 years older than her when this happened. And he was this big, huge, tall, masculine, just commanding guy who just power, authority. So she talked about him. And then I said, and what are you like? Describe yourself. And she described herself, and she's very athletic and very sharp, but it takes time to think through before she says something. And I said, do you see the difference? You're trying to be someone that doesn't fit you. And you'll always be a poor imitation of someone else, but you can be the best version of you. Don't try to be like you think you should be as a CEO. Don't try to be like that person was that had a huge influence in your life. Be you.
Speak with no fear doesn't include presentation skills or writing speeches. Why didn't you have those in the book?
The real answer is I was writing it at 5 a.m. in the morning. And after writing it for about a month, I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm done with this book. And I'll see how it does, and I'll go on and do other stuff later on. But then as I started reflecting on it and going through the editing process, I actually took out some stuff that was a little bit at least touching on that. And I said, let's make this really focused. Let's make this motivational and strategic. A lot of people just need to be told they can. It's like the classic little engine that could. I can. And so sometimes even when I'm just working with a client, I'll be like, you can do this. I believe in you. You can do this. So there's a motivational aspect to the book. And then the other part is strategic. Okay, let's give you something that you can do. For example, like the pros and cons or the negatives and positives. Imagine that. That's very strategic. That's something that you can do. And even the second edition, I actually took out even more of those extras and put in more of the motivation and more of the strategic actions that you could take to do it. So now the book becomes very focused. There's lots of books on public speaking, and there's lots of public speaking books that talk about stand this way and use your hands this way and do this and this and this. but there's not books that just hone in on overcoming fear of speaking. It's been really remarkable, Peter. I've had people reach out to me from quite literally around the world, in Africa and in parts of Asia and Australia and every continent. And it's been fascinating to see people say things like, "This is my Bible," which I thought was a little sacrilegious, but one gentleman said that. And then there's a couple of people who said, "This is trash and nobody should buy this. This is awful." And one happens to be an author of a public speaking book. I thought, really, dude? Come on.
You frequently talk about smile, pause, and breathe. Why is that?
Yeah, if you just want to get better, and you're listening to this right now, 3 things that you can do just to get better, they'll solve so many problems. 1, pause. Just slow down, create some gaps, even if it's a little bit awkward at times. If you want to get rid of fillers, the way you get rid of fillers is by pausing. The reason why you're using fillers is because there's a gap between sentences, a gap between paragraphs. And instead of you just letting there be the gap, like there is in a book, you're filling it up with a or so or however and like and extending the words and on and on and on. Pause. That will take out the filler. A pause will actually remove majority of fillers if you start using them. If you don't know how to pause, read a book and notice the commas, the periods, and the paragraphs. And just reading out loud, you'll learn how to reinstate pauses into your life. Now, pauses also allow you to, they allow you to breathe. A lot of times we just don't breathe. So then you hear someone say, okay, if you're nervous, take a deep breath at the beginning. But if you don't know how to breathe off stage, it's going to be hard to breathe correctly on stage. And so people, what they do is they'll get up at the front and go, but right now I'm actually tighter. And so all this air now comes into my body and actually has more energy to become nervous energy. And so a lot of people trying to not be nervous, take a deep breath and end up getting more nervous. But if you just learn how to breathe and just allow yourself to do a full, complete breath, all the way out. Now on the exhale, now I'm getting rid of some of those nerves. So pause, breathe. People are okay if you breathe and don't die while you're talking. They'll be totally fine. Take a sip of water, whatever you need to do to pause. And then smile. Smiles do so much. In fact, I am writing another short book. I ended up writing a short book on how to write a speech. And so I'm writing a short book on how to prepare to write a speech or prepare for a speech. And I talk about smiles a lot in this book. And there's so many things that a smile does. One of them is it releases neuropeptides into your system, which literally are making you feel better by smiling. If you're down, not like way down, but say on a 1 to 10, you're at a 5 and you're just not the best day, spend some time smiling and you're actually going to feel better.
Mike, you grew up in Mexico. How did growing up there affect your communication and your leadership?
One of the interesting things about a lot of the clients I have are from other countries. So English is their second language. One of the things I get to do is be able to identify with people and say, no, I get it. Learning how to speak a second language and speak in front of people is terrifying. I would get up in front of the class and people would laugh at me. I didn't think of myself as a class clown, but because my Spanish was so heavily accented and I said things so poorly, people would laugh. And so I leaned into this class clown. A lot of the experience I have in learning how to speak in Mexico really helps me identify and sympathize and empathize with the people I work with. And like, hey, I get it. I've done that. It also taught me to persevere through and to get to a point of excellence. Going back to that question of when I said, where you are is not where you have to stay. I know from personal experience that just because I was at a spot where I couldn't do this and it wasn't taken serious, I didn't have to stay there. I got to a spot where I was accepted to the top law school of Mexico. Well, that wouldn't have happened right away, but where you are is not where you have to stay. So it affected me in so much, like those kind of lessons in leadership. Hey, I did this. Other people can do this. I've been there. I can show other people the way. And it gave me this motivation and empathy to help other people do that. Also, I grew up in a different culture. And I think everybody would be very well suited to just learn that your culture is not just the only culture. There are other people out there that are amazing. And it puts a face to a lot of the situations that can become very theoretical. So I see things different because I grew up in a different culture. I might not always agree, but I understand that there's another point of view and that mine isn't necessarily the correct one. Imagine that. My wife says that all the time.
Did having that different perspective help you in writing the book?
Yeah, it did. One, just reliving some of those aspects of going, you know what? That was difficult for me, and reliving some of those memories, reliving even when I was talking about imagining the worst, when I look back at it, I'm like, well, what was the worst that happened? That I got laughed at. 30 years later, that's not a scarring incident in the same way. I mean, I had to deal with it for sure. It was not fun. There's a psychosomatic fever that would hit me, and so I could not go to school the next day. And so I relived it and was able to put myself in that spot. And I tell a lot of stories. And one of the biggest critiques the first edition of the book got was that there's almost too many stories. So I thought through that on the second edition, worked on them a little bit more and shortened some and took some out that weren't as relevant. But at the same time, it's what allowed a lot of people to say, oh, that speaks to me. He's been there. Oh, okay. So he didn't come out and just wasn't like, he's not a Tony Robbins. That just seems like way out there. This guy is a guy I could talk to, and the guy that, I mean, he's done some stupid things on stage. Okay. In fact, one person said, this is from the audio version. They said, if this guy can be a good public speaker, then anybody can. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly the point.
It's a great point because anybody can be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now, you've written 3 other books. Can you tell us briefly about those?
Yeah. So the second one was very short, and it was about how to write a speech. Everybody should have the system for creating content. So I give you a system for creating one. Take it, use it. Lots of colleges now use it. And so it's kind of cool to see colleges picking it up to teach people how to write a speech. The third book was releasing some old kind of spiritual devotionals that I had when I had gotten kind of soul weary. I just re-released basically a series of blogs, and I've done really no promotion on that. It's called Grow Your Soul. It's only got like 20 reviews on Amazon. All the other ones have 100 or more. Speak with No Fear has 500 plus. And then Lead with No Fear, right as the pandemic was starting, right before quarantine happened across America, my friend and I were talking about, oh, what's happening here with this? And we said, this is a time where people need to lead without any fear. So we talk about 7 shifts that people can make. And then I'm really excited. I got the workbook and the second edition of Speak with No Fear coming out. And I have a new book called Connect Through Emotional Intelligence. Super excited about that.
Speaking about books coming out and these books already being out, how can people get your books and learn more about you?
Yeah, if you do Mike Acker on Google, I show up for the whole first page. And if you go to mikeacker.com, you can find everything there. And if you go to Amazon, right, and Mike Acker. So it's Mike Acker, kind of like hacker without the H. So mikeacker.com.
It's in the notes.
Perfect.
Mike, it's been a pleasure to have you here with us. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Peter. I really appreciate being on here. It's fun talking to you beforehand as well. And thank you for sharing this and my content with your audience.
That's a wrap of another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tune in Monday when you'll hear another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George, and again Thursday for your next episode of Quick Bites, public speaking tips and techniques you can digest in 5 minutes or less. Until next time, remember, when it comes to speaking in public, you've got this.